After years and years of fan demands and a half-decade of active development, the much-anticipated Final Fantasy VII Remake is finally here. Powered by Unreal Engine 4 and directed by the PS1's original designer Tetsuya Nomura, Final Fantasy VII Remake looks to be one of the most ambitious video game revivals of all time. But how will the game actually play? How will its world and story change? When is it coming out, and what platforms can you play it on? Well, you've got questions about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and thankfully we have answers. So settle in and let's get to it. Will Final Fantasy VII Remake play differently than the PS1 game? Yes. Although don't get too worried, Final Fantasy VII Remake will feature an action-driven combat system, albeit with some tactical, command-based elements. Basically, as you hack and slash at enemies, you'll fill your ATB meter, and once you've filled a section of the meter, you can enter a tactical mode, which slows time and allows you to select special attacks or items from the menu. Ideally, it would be a best of both worlds situation. That said, if you're not an action fan, Final Fantasy VII Remake also includes a classic mode that takes the button mashing out of the equation entirely. All hacking and slashing will be handled automatically, so you don't have to worry about selecting attacks from the menu. What's this about the game being episodic? Well, Final Fantasy VII Remake is being split into multiple parts, with the first part taking place entirely in Midgar and covering roughly the first act of the original game's story. But again, as mentioned, Square Enix is significantly fleshing out the story, so this first act of the Final Fantasy VII Remake should be a full-size RPG in itself. How long will I have to wait for the rest of the story? Well, that's a good question. See, the first part of the Final Fantasy Remake has taken nearly 5 years to develop, but the wait for the subsequent entries wouldn't be as painful. Work has already begun on the next chapter, so hopefully we'll see it within the next couple of years. Will the story be the same? While the majority of the broad plot points remain the same, the first chapter of the Final Fantasy VII Remake ends on quite a different note than the original. Without delving into spoilers, it seems the Final Fantasy VII Remake's co-director Tetsuya Nomura has taken some storytelling cues from its own Kingdom Hearts series, adding a big metatextual twist to the story. In our review, Francesco warned that most purists will hate the big twist, while others with more open minds may appreciate it, so be forewarned. In addition to actual plot changes, Square Enix has significantly fleshed out the story, essentially turning Final Fantasy VII's first act into a full game in its own right. Minor characters will get more screen time, plot points that were quickly glossed over with a few text boxes will get the full cutscene treatment, and there will be all new NPCs and bosses to encounter. Certain events that occurred later in the original game have also been shuffled to appear in this first chapter of the remake instead. Has some of the more risque stuff made the cut? Well, yeah, even some of Final Fantasy VII's less 2020 friendly scenes will make the cut, including the infamous side quest where a cross-dressing Cloud infiltrates the Honeybee Inn. A few glimpses from the Honeybee Inn scenario have even made it into the latest Final Fantasy VII Remake trailer. Square Enix has hinted that some changes have been made to the Honeybee Inn more of a pantheon of entertainment rather than an obvious brothel, but it seems like the essence of the side quest is being retained. Well, what's the release date? Well, the first part of Final Fantasy VII Remake arrives on April 10th, 2020. Wait, I heard the game was already out. Well, it all depends on where you live. The recent pandemic has thrown off the launch of Final Fantasy VII Remake, with physical copies of the game being shipped and sold early in Australia and many parts of Europe. Okay, what if I don't live in Australia or Europe? Well, unfortunately, the physical copies of Final Fantasy VII Remake were not shipped early to retailers in North America and other parts of the world, and Square Enix aren't guaranteeing their availability on launch day. Unless you've already managed to snag a copy, there's a chance you may have to buy digital on launch day. Well, what platforms is the game coming to? Well, Final Fantasy VII Remake will only be available at PS4 on launch, but that exclusivity will only last for a year. After that, who's to say? While Square Enix has yet to announce any other platforms, there are rumors that the game will become available on PC and Xbox One eventually. And what about next-gen PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X? Well, we'll just have to wait to see on those. Can I try before I buy? Well, no problem. A demo which lets players tackle the iconic opening reactor bomb mission is available. Be forewarned though, your progress won't actually carry over to the full game. Will the game be a huge download? Well, start clearing some storage space now. While not obviously as huge as the originally feared, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a double Blu-ray game and weighs in a bit over 90 gigabytes. Thankfully, preloading is available now, so if you want to play on launch day without a big delay, you might want to get to that. Are there any fancy special editions? Well, of course. You can choose between the $60 standard version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, the $80 deluxe edition, or the swanky $330 first class edition. Last but not least, is Final Fantasy VII Remake worth my money? Now approach this one with some caution if you're not the type who deals with change well, but our own Francesco was very impressed overall with the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Well guys, there you have it. Everything you really need to know about Final Fantasy VII Remake before jumping in. Still have some questions? Well, head on over to the site and toss them our way. For more on this and other news, follow the link in the description and make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so that we don't miss you in the next one.